Hello to everyone. Welcome to another video of Mike's chess videos. Today I'm going to be playing a training game. It's not going to be as long as I would like. I'd like to play a long time control game, say 45 minutes with 45 seconds additional for every move that you make. But I've been unable to find anyone to play that game against. So I'm going to decrease the time control down to 15 minutes with an additional 10 seconds for each move you make. And still, that's a pretty good time control. It should be a bit more exciting considering we have to move a little bit quicker. But I'm going to put the challenge out now to find a game. I'm going to put into focus mode so that I don't even know the rating of the person I'm going to play against. I can't see it anywhere on this screen. And hopefully we'll actually find a game and have a good game to play. So what I'm going to do now is just pause the video, and when a challenge comes up, I will see you again. All right, we have a challenger. For some reason, it's taken me out of focus mode, but that's okay. So he's started off with G3. And I guess I will just take the center with my pawns. He's probably going to fianchetto his bishop, but I have a nice pawn center, which he's going to try and attack from the outset. He might play a move like C4 or maybe E4. In fact, he's prepared both of those moves even a little bit better now to attack my center from afar. I think I'm going to want to develop. I think that's only natural. If I do develop, though, he might be ready to put an early pawn storm on me. Realistically, though, what else am I going to do differently than develop? So now this pawn at least is overprotected. This square has a little bit more pressure on it. Okay. But yeah, certainly things are already interesting. So he's probably going to castle, I would somewhat hope. I could put my bishop here so I'm ready to castle. Or I could develop the knight. But I'm going to do it with the bishop because I think maybe this pawn might be good here one day, potentially. And I don't want the knight to be here all along. I'd rather develop this guy first so that it's not blocked in by the knight. Just wondering whether or not the bishop might be better over here. And it could be better there. Absolutely. Other moves to consider would be a move like this to attack this knight immediately. If he takes and I take back, he can trade the queens off. But then he still has to move the knight. Say he moves it there, attacking the pawn twice, because his bishop would also be attacking the pawn. Well, then I can develop this bishop. And I don't know. I think that looks okay. He can attack that pawn again. However, I can pin that knight. He can unpin, and I can take. He can take, threatening to take my knight and then take the pawn. So I don't really like that situation. It seems like I'm on the back foot there. Seems like I am on the back foot. So I will just, in the interest of time, okay, I'm going to play the bishop to a very natural developing square where it has an influence on defending the E5 pawn. Okay, so this move was not what I was expecting. It takes away this square from his knight. I suppose the idea is he's wanting to support this move or possibly to support this move. And it seems as though he's delaying castling because I bet if I castle, he's going to start throwing pawns down the board at me. So that's all right. That's fine. We can find ways to deal with this. Now, I was saying I might not mind to put my knight here, but I'd like to get my bishop out. Well, I wonder if I should put my bishop here immediately and just threaten to take the knight, have him take back, and then just play a move as simple as this. Just blunting his light squared bishop. But at the same time, I would be leaving his bishop unopposed. It would be unable to take advantage of that square. If I play a move like this, he could always move the knight away. Leaving my bishop potentially not doing much, although to chase that bishop would require him to make some weaknesses around his king. He hasn't yet castled, but he's made weaknesses on this side as well. Okay. This move also comes to mind, c5. c5 to really control this square. Then I wouldn't mind at all to put the knight behind it. So actually, that's what I'm going to do. The bishop here has lost a defender because the pawn no longer defends. However, the queen defends it still, and everything seems fairly solid. He's also now committed to castling on this side. I mean, I think I'm going to do the same. Is there anything else I would like to do before we castle? Do I want to just continue my development? Or do I castle? Might not make a huge difference, but I'm happy now that I can put my knight here. I think that's a good thing. Probably have to consider moves like this to pin my knight. It could be a little bit annoying to have to deal with that. But in that case, I guess I can just immediately give my, attack. And I haven't actually committed my king to castling yet. So if he were to play back like this, we could do moves like this, and that might be good in this scenario. So I will start with developing the knight, actually. Even though it might give him a chance to start opening, I don't know what was best there, and I don't know if it really makes a big difference. In terms of time, though, I'm 5 minutes down. He's got more time than when we started. We're kind of getting into the middle game. Our opening plans have been more or less laid out. Okay, so he's surely going to want to play this move next. Can I make that impossible for him? Because then if he plays this, I can take, and he won't be able to take back with this. And if he takes back with that, things will be fine. So I think that's an okay move. Maybe a bit of a weakening move, but it leaves him with a very strange pawn. It also leaves me with a bit of a strange pawn, though. And at present, if he plays that move, I can still just take it. He takes back. Then I can play a move like this to prevent him from pushing the pawn any further. I mean, I'm not too sure, a5 stops his idea. a5 does stop his idea, but maybe h6 would be even also a good move, just to prevent this from landing on the board at all. If he were to play a move like this, I could attack that bishop fairly readily. So at the moment, it's not necessarily easy for him to find a good way to continue his development. So maybe I should just castle. And when he plays something like this, either take, or I could continue pushing ahead. But taking would open a file, and that's probably not a bad thing, considering I think my development's a bit better than his. I'm still not worried about this because I believe that pushing up against this bishop, if he moves back, I think I can actually still attack it. Okay, so he plays this move, and my basic plan here was simply to take and open up a file. He could take back this way, which probably is what he would do. Or I can just leave this situation as it is. And if he takes my pawn, Well, then this bishop, which initially I was saying I might like to get up to this square, would get to that square. He could then attack the bishop. I take, he takes, and then the bishop would have to drop. So not completely 100% sure, but I don't think taking is too bad of a move. Pushing's probably not too bad of a move either, just to fix this weakness. It would fix this weakness. It would give him, if he takes and I take back, then I've got a bit of a weak pawn there myself. Now, I wonder if I should have played a5 just to prevent his idea, but I like the fact that I'm now castled. And I don't think I need to do anything. I might just play this move as prophylaxis, again in the interests of time. Everything's defended. Am I worried about this move? Not necessarily, because the bishop here, actually the bishop there might become overloaded. So what I might do is now play a5, like I was saying, to prevent this move from occurring and to stabilize my knight and therefore stabilize the defense of this pawn. If he plays a move like this, which I'm fairly sure he would like to do that at the moment, to open up his bishop, otherwise his bishop does nothing. So I think he would love to move that pawn. That now gives me more of a mind to play this move, fixing this pawn's weakness. If he takes, I take. And yes, I have a very weak pawn there, but by the same token, how is he going to take advantage of it? He could try and attack my knight, I suppose. But then my knight could come over here and possibly land up here one day. That's really quite interesting to me. Again, I could take, but he either takes and opens up his rook, which is not the end of the world, or he takes back and he's opened up this nice diagonal for himself. And I don't want him to be able to do that. There's also this to have a go at, closing the diagonal. He could push his pawn and then the center is closed as well. But then in that case, I can take this pawn and win it. And if I push this pawn and he takes it, then I can take with my knight or with, say, this pawn. And in that scenario, I think everything is pretty much okay. Does open up his other bishop, though. So he's got the double bishops going. Okay, I've only got 6 minutes left on the clock. This is why I like to play longer time controls. I'm going to stabilize my knight, after all. But I've just lost a pawn because he can take there and then take. No, he can't take there because I stabilized my knight. Okay, now this pawn is doing a good job of blocking his knight from coming where it might otherwise like to go. Now, need to find ways to proceed. And got to find ways to not spend all the time I have on the chessboard as well. So I think we'll develop the bishop. I have half an idea of developing the queen and then trying to trade these bishops off potentially. Okay, he's now attacking this guy for a second time, which might make me want to put my queen over here. It might also just make me think maybe the time has come for a trade. Perhaps the time there has come for a trade. I don't mind if he takes this way. What's his rook really doing there? At present, maybe not a lot. If I take and he takes it this way, then there's this move. If I want it, which I think is okay. Could also put my queen here just to defend, but I don't really want my queen tied down to defending a pawn. I could defend with my knight as well. Could defend with my knight. What's he going to do though? Down to 4 minutes. is this move. And if he takes, I can take back and I'll be hitting that knight, which is somewhat interesting. I actually like that. I know I don't have a lot of time here, but I think I like this move. Because again, I'm fixing this weakness. I'm fixing this so that his bishop can't actually take advantage of this diagonal. Of course, his bishop can reroute itself. But nevertheless, you know, once, if I want to, I can play these moves, but I don't even have to do that because I still have a bishop here defending the pawn now. Yeah, so this is actually defended. And his bishop's not doing a whole heap right now. So now it's a little bit more calm. I can decide what I want to do. He still can't play this because he just loses the pawn. So I don't think there's any need to play a move like this, which really creates more weaknesses by leaving the knight undefended. Okay, so what next then? What next? It's a nice square there if I could get a knight there one day, but I don't see a way to do that. Perhaps I could put the bishop here onto a longer diagonal, but then I would lose view of this pawn. 3 minutes 51 to go. All right, so I do want to make the most of this game. This is definitely another potential move here. Just to attack this knight. Where does this knight actually go? I suppose he can come here. And that might be a move that he would like to play. So it's probably, this pawn's doing a good job, I think. Why don't we get the rook into the game? Let's get the rook here. Off the diagonal of this sneaky bishop. Just off the diagonal and onto a file where it might protect this pawn in certain circumstances. Okay. Getting the pieces into the game, hopefully on good strategic squares. Okay, he's attacking the knight. Doesn't matter to me much at all. This knight, though, I'm wondering now about this move. This move is not possible. He can capture. But I certainly need to question whether this move is a possibility. It somewhat forces him to come back here. I could also, yeah, but it makes weaknesses in my position at the same time. Makes weaknesses in my position, which I don't necessarily want to create. Now my knight is pinned at present. I'm considering a move like this, for sure. Is there a way I can take control of this square so that I can then do something like this? Not too sure about that. I think what I might have to do, or what I might do, not have to, is, let's see now. Let's see now. Okay, I'm going to develop my queen, connect the rooks, come up with this as a possibility in the air, and also give an extra defender to this pawn. All right. So now if I do this, he can just move his bishop back. That's true. That is true. What if I do this? See, I'm playing a bit more quick than I would like to play. What's going on? I'm playing quicker than I would like to play. Unfortunately, that is the way that it goes. Chess, time is an element in chess, and there's no escaping that. Just like time is an element in life. And if you don't use it, you know, correctly or the way that you might like to, well, you don't get a second chance with it. Do I want to just make a simple move like this? I think probably, given the time situation, this is probably my most sensible move. I might have the ability to double up double up my rooks, or do I want to take this way? I think I'm going to try and double up my rooks. If given the opportunity. If he takes there, I'm almost certainly going to take with the bishop. All right, so I'm not unhappy with my position. I'm just unhappy with my time scenario. He takes the knight. I will take back with the rook. I don't have pre-moves turned on. Okay, he's blocked his own bishop there. Be nice to get a knight here one day. Now, my bishop's not doing a lot. I wonder if I should actually just destroy his pawn structure here. I really do wonder if I should just destroy the pawn structure. It's possible that's an idea. What I could also do is attack his bishop, but that helps him to get it to a better square. But then I can bring my rook here and I've somewhat infiltrated. And it might become hard for him to defend this pawn. In fact, I think that would be the case. Because my bishops actually help me to, drive a rook away from these squares as well, potentially. Okay, so he's just defended the bishop in light of those things. Now I can go ahead with my plan of doubling rooks here. I can double the rooks. Which I think I'll do, again, because of the time issue. If he attacks me here, same plan abounds. Okay, he brings the knight back, attacking the rook. Okay, that's a good move. Maybe I should have taken the opportunity to take the knight off the board. After all, probably would have been, oh no, I'm running low on time, less than a minute. Okay, less than a minute. Definitely interesting times. Do I try and infiltrate here with my rook? I think not. I think what I do is just keep my rook active on a square where it's safe. It's protected by a pawn. It's protected by the other rook. At least his bishop can't ever actually get onto this nice diagonal because I would immediately take the pawn. I'm not saying he can't ever do that, but he certainly can't do it right now. If he goes for something like this, I have the choice to either take and ruin the pawns or give a check and then another check, forcing his bishop to come back and then bringing my bishop up here, which would be really nice for me because his bishop would be pinned. He would be unable to take. So if he does this, I will play this move. I guess he could come back in that scenario, however. So actually, I'd probably take here and just double the pawns and then sit the other rook in its place. Okay, so he goes back. Not sure how much that really achieves for him. Not sure how much that really achieves. This knight's not doing a heck of a lot. This bishop's not doing a heck of a lot. So not sure about this, but because of time, I'm just going to play a move. Threatening to take the knight. If he takes back, I get to take. So I think he's going to have to move the knight or otherwise defend it in an awkward way. And if he moves it out of the way somewhere, perhaps back here, then I might get the opportunity to get my rooks back up to the second rank. Also now, I'm kind of have my eyes on this square, which is nice, really nice. So I can consider this again now. I can also now consider this again, which actually I think I might do this time. Let's just take that off the board so we don't have to worry about it in the future. Now I'm considering a move like this. This is an interesting sort of a move. Maybe this is better so that the bishop can't really escape. Again, I'm just so low on time, which is unfortunate, but let's give this a go. Let's just give this a go. 24 seconds is what I've got versus 14 minutes. And I think I've had a good position. I've achieved, a decent amount in this game. If I had more time, I think obviously I would probably be able to finish this game more strongly. But even as it is, I'm not unhappy with how we've gone. So if we get the trade here, I'll be putting pressure on this pawn, which I don't see a way for him to handle the pressure really. I still will control this file, though he'll be able to challenge me. I'll be able to just come back if I don't want to take the pawn. His pawn structure is already damaged. Even if I don't take the pawn, he's got this very weird backwards pawn. He's got these backwards pawn. Look at his bishop doing absolutely zilch as long as this pawn's here, which at this point, it looks like that pawn's going to be there for a long time. This is almost now starting to look to me like actually an end game, and I should be thinking about my king's activity. I think it's time to start thinking about those sorts of considerations. Of course, if he takes my bishop, I will take back and we'll take it from there. If he comes here, then I think I'm going to take the bishop, let him take with the rook. And probably then I will infiltrate to the 7th rank. Or would I, come here and just try and get a pawn? That I'm not too clear of. Maybe I would elevate this rook, looking to take, okay, he's trying to get the bishop back around this way, which makes a lot of sense, but it means he's going to give up this pawn in so doing. I'm going to actually just bring this rook up to the game. I'm threatening this now. So yeah, you can get your bishop to a better square, but I'm going to bring my rook here and you're going to have to say bye-bye to your bishop. That's basically my threat at the moment. Okay. All right. Again, if he takes the bishop, I will take, and then we'll see what happens after that. Still got 19 seconds. This is the benefit of having 10 extra seconds per move, is that I can still play just on the increment, living life on the edge. All right. So will he play a move like this? That might be good for him. He doesn't. So I think I can play this now. And I'm double attacking this bishop. And the bishop cannot move because it's pinned. And I don't think there's any piece that he can bring to the defense of the bishop. So that doesn't help you at the moment. All I need to know is what's the best way to take. And I think it's probably like this. But I don't want to screw this up now. If I take like this and he does something like that, yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm going to go with my instinct on this one. It's not a check. It's not a check. But it really threatens a nice discovered check. Maybe I should have just taken that with my rook. I probably should have just taken that with my rook. Went with my instinct. Went with my instinct. Because now, if he does something like this, well, I'll still just, would I take that bishop? Yeah, I think I probably misplayed that right there. Okay, but he's giving me a chance. He's giving me a chance anyway. So we'll give that check. Give another check. And we're just gathering a little bit of time on the board. And what do we want to do? What do we actually want to do here? This is defended. We don't actually have to worry about it. How about we do this? Just defend it again. We can plant the bishop here. This rook is solid as a rock. And I think things are looking good. I've only got 29 seconds on the clock, but the position is pretty outrageously good. We can give this check. We can trade some rooks if we like. We have an extra piece in the game. Where does he actually go right now? This is actually going to be good. This may be good. Because if we give this check, Then we can give this check and we get more trades. This is going to be a win, my friends. This is going to be a win. Give this check to trade off the other rook. We now have an extra piece and a much better pawn structure, a safe king, and the win here should be relatively elementary. So let's fix his pawns. I think, how long do we have? 44 seconds on the clock. Or should we just bring the knight up to also occupy some lovely, lovely squares? He can only bring his king in this way. Of course, I want to get my king active as well. I think that is obvious. Let's get the knight up to a good square. And just be hopefully very calm. Let's take this square away from his king. He can't use that square. He can't use any of these squares. And that means his king actually can't make any progress here at all. So that's the benefit of beautiful placement of my knight. Also, his bishop is completely useless against either of these pieces. Can't do anything at all, which now gives me the freedom to get my king as active as I want it to be. So what I might do now is play a move like this. Fix his pawn weaknesses. Bishop does a good job. And then I can maybe get my king active up this way. If his king ever moves, you know, there'll be other issues for him to think about. This pawn still does a great job of preventing this pawn from moving. This pawn can't move because of my bishop. Things are looking very nice, despite the fact that I've only got 27 seconds in time. It's not all about time in chess. Okay, yes, it's very important. No question about it. Now I can give a check here. Then if he comes back, I don't see really what I've achieved. I can give a check like that. And, you know, basically hope he gets into a forkable position at some stage. But I think instead, I think this move makes sense. Put a bit of pressure on his bishop, but also just free up the f7 square for my king. And again, 13 seconds only on the clock, so really not a lot of time, and I have to really make sure I'm careful of all those things. Let's hit that bishop. It's defended by my knight. Besides, his king is actually useless. It can't get in there at the moment. So now let's get the king a bit more active. We're going to have to move this pawn out the way unless we want to lose it. And now we probably want to play a move like this, potentially. That would be okay. But I'll tell you what, let's just do this so that his bishop is completely impotent. His bishop is impotent. The only piece on the board where it can even look at is this one, but it can't because of my knight, which can't be attacked. So let's bring the king up now. Yep, your king can't go anywhere from there anyway. So I'm just going to go here, building up a bit of time, even if it's not precise. At this point, it doesn't matter, because I will find ways eventually to break through. This is almost nice, almost nice. We can play moves like this now as well, just because why not? Puts him back on the ball. He can move his bishop around, that's true. If he does something like this, so this is kind of waiting for this, so check. He's going to have to move either here or here. And then there's going to be this move, which attacks his bishop and this pawn. So I think I'm happy to do that now. It's just a matter of converting this strong advantage position into a victory. If I had more time, it would be elementary. At 28 seconds, it still pretty much is elementary. So we're hitting the bishop. He cannot afford to lose that bishop. He also still cannot attack this bishop because of the way that my pieces defend all these squares and just keep him blocked out. I'm attacking this pawn, which is very important. I think I would just, I'm not sure. I think I'd take the bishop, the pawn, because why not? So he defends his bishop. He gives up on this pawn, and position is going to continue to collapse more and more and more as time now goes on. Now, I'm obviously not going to give him this bishop for free, no question. So where do I want to put it? That's the only question. Maybe here where it protects the queening square, but again, it really doesn't matter. I can just come here, sit the bishop back on a square where it's entirely stable. And then I can bring my knight back into the game. I can push these other pawns, use my active king. So there's a check. So he should resign at this point. Now there's no problems. There's no problems here, even in terms of time. So all I'm going to do is push these pawns, create a pass pawn, get a couple of queens, and win the game. There's no stalemate as long as he's got his bishop to move, which is really all he can do at the moment. So I'm going to push this pawn. He takes, I take back. Now I've got these 3 pawns versus 1. And one of these pawns is either going to become a queen, or it's going to force him to give up his bishop at some stage. I think we just push this pawn. He resigned. I thought for a moment there I might have run out of time, but actually I've still got a minute on the clock because those 10-second increments were building up there towards the end. I've got to say I'm pretty happy with that game. I think I played well. The computer somewhat agrees that it says there was a mistake at some point, and I'd like to know when that was, but let's have a quick look at the game itself and see, in hindsight, what did I think about it? So I think it was nice just at the start of the game to try and take control of the center and to develop my pieces, giving myself the option to castle. But then, given his lack of development and his lack of challenging the center and wanting optimum placement of my pieces, I thought, you know what, I'll put 3 pawns in the center because why not? And then I can place my knight exactly where I want it. My only kind of misgiving with the way I played was I think I would have been a little bit more comfortable if I had played a5 in this position. Instead, I castled and I let him play b4. But if I'd played a5, b4 would not be possible because then I can just take the pawn. And I'm a pawn to the good for no reason for him. If he takes back, I take his rook. And if he takes back using the other pawn, well, I just recapture again. And it's the same deal. I'm up a pawn. If he takes back, I take the rook. This pawn is also still under attack. So I guess a5 has benefit. He could have still just continued his development, certainly not to that square, but maybe out to here. And then put his knight out this way. He could have done things, no doubt. But I wonder if maybe by castling, if maybe I made it more comfortable for him, allowing him to play b4. Still, I just played a prophylactic move so that he wouldn't be able to develop here and give me any troubles with a pin. I realized here that his bishop could potentially become weak if this pawn was fixed. But I wanted to, firstly, importantly, stabilize my knight, because if I had done something else, then I would think he could have destabilized my knight. I guess my knight would come perhaps here. Then he could play a move like this. It wouldn't really have been the end of the world. So, I don't think it was a mistake to play h6, and I don't think it was a mistake to play a5. I was quite happy with that. He developed his knight. I developed my bishop. he put his knight here attacking this pawn. My initial thought was just to get rid of the pawn because it's a headache now. Like, if I do nothing, the idea is he's going to take the pawn. If I take back, he takes back, and he's won a lot. So after he takes, I'd have to retreat the bishop, and he's just up a pawn. So I don't want to let that happen. But I also don't want to defend it with my other pawn because my knight becomes weak. This pawn loses a defender, and just my position loosens. Everything's a bit looser now. I didn't really want to put my queen on the job because he can put a rook here, and one day if there's lots of trades, my queen can become vulnerable. And also, I don't want to have my queen assigned to the task of defending a pawn. So all those things, that's what's gave me the idea to push the pawn forward, which I liked the idea. Maybe that was a mistake, but after takes, his knight did have to move as far as I could tell. I would have thought maybe this was a better move for the knight, potentially. Here I still could take, and assuming queen trades doesn't, or maybe he just takes bishop. I've ruined his pawn structure here, which is nice. And maybe then I could put my queen here and attack this very vulnerable pawn, which is probably what I would have done. So probably after takes, he would have to take the queen. Then I could actually take this pawn as a kamikaze check and then recapture the queen, and I've won a pawn. So I think that variation actually turns out well for me as well. So yeah, interesting. So he moved his knight back anyway. And then I liked this move. I was pretty happy with this move because I was a little bit stuck, didn't know what to do. I was happy that my bishop was defending the c4 pawn. And I was considering a move like this, but again, this loosens the position. This knight suddenly feels very vulnerable against attacks. He could play a move like this, and even looks like he's just giving up a knight, but he's not, because my knight's also undefended. And there could be some actual tactics associated with that in future. This pawn loses the defender. But meanwhile, this rook's not doing anything. So I was actually very happy to find, it's obvious now, of course, but it was hard for me to see it, and I'm glad that I found rook c8. Okay, he put his knight on the side of the board. That was a bit strange, tempting me into this move, but I saw that he could just come straight on back, and I'm still unable to play this move, again, because he will get his knight here. The only reason he can't put his knight here at the moment is because this pawn is where it is. The moment I push it up, that's what relinquishes this square. It comes with tempo on my bishop and my knight. And if I take, he's got a little bit more room to breathe here, although now I see that because my rook is beautifully placed, supporting the pawn, the rook also supports the pawn being pushed, which is a fork against these two pieces in that scenario, which I did not see at the time. So I wonder if that might have been the idea. And if he's pushed all the way back, well, here I'm not too sure. Again, the position is loosening. I think I have to do something to defend this pawn because it is attacked twice by his knight and bishop. It was only defended by my knight. Now it's defended by the bishop too. Again, my position looks very, very loose here. I've made long-term weaknesses around my king, and I did not want to play that way. So instead, I just developed my queen. Now, if he does nothing at all, then I can try and enforce a trade of these bishops, whether he takes and then I take back, or whether, he does some other move and then I'm forced to take him. Either way, those bishops are off the board, and this diagonal, which previously was owned by him, is now a free-for-all. So that was, at least I thought, a constructive move to put the queen here with this idea in mind. He moved his rook. So now the idea is if I do put my bishop here, he's no longer forced to trade because he can actually just move his bishop away and there's no longer a rook there. In the previous example, if he had moved his bishop away, he would lose the rook for a bishop, which wouldn't make sense for him. So by moving his rook, he takes the sting out of this move. He still takes control of this long diagonal. So that's why at this stage, I did not go for that. And instead, in time pressure, just brought another rook to a file which was open. This is the only open file on the board. Open file because there's no pawns anywhere. It's just pieces, no pawns. So rooks love being on open files. So I thought, this rook's not doing a whole lot. Let's get some support for my queen. I thought that was okay. Now in this position, I didn't want to let him take my bishop because having two bishops is typically an advantage. So I just dropped the bishop back. Again, I had very low time. And yes, it allows him to trade queens. Not a problem though, because this is where I started to, I own the D file now. He takes, I take back. And he played this move, which I thought was probably not very strong because what does it do to his bishop? I don't think it's good. I could be wrong. It probably isn't too bad, but I didn't feel bad about that move at all. In terms of a mistake, I think if I made a mistake in this game, I liked this move. I liked this move, attacking the bishop. My idea was if he attacks my rook, I can come here to attack the pawn. He can't use the bishop to defend the pawn because I would just take it. And if he tries to use the rook, which is the only other piece capable of defending the pawn, then I have this move to attack the rook. And even if he tries to block the attack, I can take, well, I could take that pawn there, or there I could even take the knight. But I could take here attacking the rook. And if the rook moves, well, if he moves somewhere like this, I can take the bishop. And if he takes back, I take back. So all of those moves, all of those variations look really good. And if he goes all the way back to defend the bishop, well, once again, I can take the pawn at the very least. So all of those variations I think look good for me, which is why I'm happy with the move. I'm happy with the move rook d2. I thought that was good. He defended the bishop. I think if I made a mistake, it would have been here. I think here I probably should have just taken the knight, ruining his pawn structure, and simply then doubling rooks. I think that would have been a very simple but strong way to play. Instead, I doubled rooks immediately, and that gave him the opportunity to get his knight back in the game, keeping his pawn structure healthy and attacking my rook. So I kept my rook very active. And this move, thankfully from him, also a pretty impotent move. I don't know what he's trying to do there. His bishop does, not a lot there either. And that gave me the opportunity to attack this knight. And if he does nothing, I'm going to take the knight. So I think this is good. And when he came back, now I took my chance. I like this move because now again, I can get the bishop off the board. If I had come here, he could actually bring the bishop over this way, which would have been annoying. However, now that I see this position, here I could play a move like this. And say, look, if you take my bishop, I take yours. But remember, I took the pawn before I took the bishop. So that would have been probably fine. I'm still attacking this pawn as well. I think at this point, I just have a very winning position. But what I liked, the reason I played this is because now he can't really play the bishop. Well, anyway, if he plays the bishop back, I still get to take it, and I'm trading. And if he plays the bishop this way, well, I don't really know why he didn't do that, but at least then I'm, controlling a lot of space around his king. I could then still go with the same idea of, like that I did in the game of bringing a rook up here, which would be very dangerous against his king, taking advantage of the fact that his pawn structure is ruined and that his G file is semi-open. So yeah, he tried to get his bishop back in the game, but I elevated my rook to try and take advantage of this semi-open G file. He missed that threat, and that's really where the game ended. Even though I had very little time on the clock, there's no way for him to defend this bishop. The other thing that might have been a mistake here is that I think maybe I should have taken this with the rook instead of taking with the bishop. Now he should come here, because if he comes this way, well, then there's just going to be a check, which he's not going to enjoy, followed by another check, which he's not going to enjoy, followed by another check, which he's not going to enjoy. Something like that. It wouldn't be good for him. But when I took with the bishop, I actually gave him an opportunity. I think he could have played something like this, which still isn't good for him. But let's say now I take this bishop. It means he can take this bishop, but then I suppose I take that with check, and life is still very, very good for me. Doesn't matter where he goes, life remains very, very good here for me. So I think I did well, and I think that the rest of the game, just clicking through it, the rest of the game was pretty much elementary. Just got the pieces off the board, put my pieces in good positions where his king was never able to go past these squares. So his king was just stuck back here. I fixed his pawn weaknesses. I took my time. His king still can't get through any of these squares. So his king's just stuck, basically only these squares for his king. My king, if I was going to color in the entire board, my king can go anywhere. Okay, and my king just freely moves. I move my pawn so that his bishop is absolutely useless, can't do anything whatsoever. My pieces are beautiful. And then found this little fork. He can't defend both at the same time. He would have to do this, give up his bishop, which makes no sense. So he saves his bishop, I take the pawn. And the rest was absolutely straightforward. So he resigned here. Pretty happy with that game. Time was an issue. I definitely put myself in I wouldn't say unnecessary time constraints or time pressure, but I put myself in time pressure. Nevertheless, I'm happy with the way that I played the game. So what I quickly want to do is have a look at what the computer thought. What was the mistake? Was it the fact that I didn't play a5? Was it the fact that I didn't take his knight on h4 when I had a chance? Was it the fact that I took with a bishop instead of taking check with a rook? Let's have a look. So playing through the game, these are all book moves, theoretical moves. Not that I know the theory, but theory and chess has a bunch of principles behind it, and I am applying principles. So it's no surprise that the principles are in line with theory. So first thing to notice, this move a5. If I had played a5, which the reason I didn't do it is because it leaves a backwards pawn here and creates some weaknesses in that regard. Now I'd like to see, an evaluation. So a5 here is good. It's definitely a good move. It's not a bad move anyway. It's not a bad move. It would have been a legitimate way to play, according to the computer. But by the same token, castling was just as good, if not actually better. Apparently, it's the best move. So we proceed. He plays b4, h6. Very good. So far, I've been playing really nicely. a6 was nice to stabilize my knight. Okay, getting my bishop out was very good. So I'm actually very happy with how I've been playing this so far. c4, very nice. Bringing the rook across, very nice. Okay, he moved his knight over here. At this point, I've got an advantage as black, so I'm definitely playing well. Putting the queen out onto the d7 square was good. c7 also would have been good, but okay, this is very nice. It's equal best move. c7 and d7 both essentially equivalent, just with different ideas behind them. So I chose the one that I understood. For him, rook e1 was a mistake. And that's interesting. So it turns out that my mistake in the game, my mistake was actually rook fd1. And again, this was a time pressured situation. The best move here was to attack this knight, with the idea, I suppose, that if he uses the only safe square on the board, then I guess we can play e4. Where's he going to go? I would still suspect he comes here. They're saying maybe he can take on g5. But let's have a look at d4 first. What happens at d4? Is it what we've already spoken about, where knight takes knight, pawn takes, and then we push c3? It's actually saying e3. Computer wants e3. So I was saying in my analysis that, in fact, c3. c3 is the computer move. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that idea I did come up with in the analysis. I didn't come up with that during the game. If he sacrifices for the pawn, what do I do here? Well, h takes, and we've won some material. And then say knight takes e4. So we haven't even won very much material. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and then f5. Yeah, so this, is a very, very kind of aggressive way to play. Bishop back to g2. You can see that if I had played this way, my king is really wide open, lacking a lot of defenders, but the computer says this is very, very good for black. We can continue with f4 and try and open up his position. But from my perspective, this looks really complex and really risky and really dangerous. So if you can give me good explanations of why I should have played that way and why that's not dangerous, that'd be awesome. Please leave it in the comment below, leave a comment in the box below. So even though rook fd8 was a mistake, it's not like I took my advantage and gave it away to him. I still retain a very strong position. It's just not as strong objectively as g5, but it's also not as complex, which means I'm able to understand it. And I think a 1.78 advantage that I can understand is probably better, especially in time pressure, than a g5, than a 3.35 advantage that I don't understand, and that could get me into trouble. So I went for the move I could understand. I think that's understandable. And here, even taking a look at this move, that bringing the bishop back was also an inaccuracy. Still not a bad move. It's something I can understand in time pressure, and it doesn't give away the advantage. It still holds my advantage. Nevertheless, taking the knight was better because it impels him to take with the bishop. And then I suppose what's the big deal here is we can play f5. I wouldn't think we can't play f5 or g5. And start again storming his king on this side of the board. So let's say f5. Bishop's going to have to move. I'm assuming back to g2, or it's saying takes on c6. If it takes on c6, I could probably take with the rook, or the pawn, or the queen. All the same, really. I would take with the rook. That rook can one day come around here. If he played queen c2 here, now I could consider g5 as strong. g5, because there's less pieces on the board, and I do have quite a lot of defense in regards to my pieces around this area of the board. If he plays knight to g6, that almost seems suicidal for his knight. So knight g2 is recommended as the best move. I'm supposing here we're going to play f4. No, we're going to play king g7 or queen g7. Sorry, queen f7. Again, though, objectively better, but these are not really ideas that I understand. Don't really understand why you would put the queen on f7 there. We can have one more look at it and try and understand it. Why did you play queen f7? Maybe to prepare f4, I suppose, and just so that after f4, yeah, if you'd done something, if you just played f4 straight away, then I guess you can give this check, which is a bit annoying. You're still winning, no problems. No, actually, white is winning here. Because what does he do? Like, why not? You can't block because you lose the bishop. So that's why before you play f4, you would have to play this. And this is what I mean. This is getting complex. It's good to know, and it's really good to like look at and learn from. But in a time pressured situation, I'm certainly not going to harass myself about the fact that I didn't play that way, and that instead I opted to do something that I understood, which is bishop e7, still having a 1.4 advantage. Now, after he takes, I take back, he takes, I take back. Yeah, e4. I didn't like that move for him. And indeed, that gave me a big advantage. Before that, I had an advantage, but it wasn't big. After it, I've got a big advantage. So this was a very nice move. And here, yep, indeed, this was inaccurate. Not the end of the world, but I should have, in fact, taken the knight first, ruining his pawn structure. And then I thought I would double rooks here. Is that what it wants me to do? Rook c to d8. Yep. So I think, I played pretty well. I think I played very well, very practically. The mistakes of rook fd8 being a mistake, well, from a practical perspective, it wasn't necessarily a mistake. If I was playing a really long game and I had a lot of time, then I might consider it, inaccurate, but I still have an advantage. Bishop e7, likewise, and rook cd8 immediately, likewise, slightly inaccurate, but realistically, I think I had the advantage through this entire game. And from this point forth, it looks like I pretty much did well. These are all good moves. And turns out there's no real difference between taking with the bishop and taking with the rook, as my analysis seemed to suggest. And yep, did well just to get the pieces off the board. Okay, once again, here it's saying that this is an inaccuracy, but again, it's what I understand. It's getting the pieces off the board, and look, I've got an advantage of 6.6, which is a huge advantage. I don't think that that's inaccurate. I mean, inaccurate, sure, but it's certainly not a mistake. It wanted to play this move, but that leaves his rook on the board and gives him opportunities. I mean, he might not have many opportunities, but why do that? Why not just get the rooks off the board and then, proceed with a totally winning position? So I'm not upset about that at all. And the rest was straightforward. And that's it. He resigned and I was the winner. So looking at that, it really looks like I took the advantage. Let's see. We had book moves. Even automatically, the computer says I got a slight advantage. I don't think I gave the advantage away at all throughout the game. The advantage, okay, here it's back to even. Back to even, but I've got the very slight advantage. And really, he didn't have an advantage at all. So my advantage is growing. And growing. And slowly these little things are happening over time. And actually, I had the advantage for the entire game. So I think I played that pretty well. I think I deserved the win. Yeah, it got pretty low on time at certain points. Sorry if that stressed you out, but hopefully you enjoyed this game. Give us a like, subscribe as well so you get the next one. We'll be doing some more puzzle streaks, some more games. I might even do some game analyses as well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.